Hello, everybody. Good day. It's Gavin here from GCRE TV. Today we have Blaine Strickland from HBS Resources, who's going to be talking about the great opportunity that we're facing right now during COVID. Blaine, I'm going to hand it over to you now to get on with the show today, and I will speak to you again at the end.
Okay, great. Thank you, Gavin. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Blaine Strickland. I am broadcasting today from Orlando, Florida. The idea behind this presentation came to me about 6 months ago, just after COVID really set in. And of course, there was a huge global shock. And then people began to ask me, hey, is there some silver lining here? Is there some way to make something out of this situation? And over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I began to think about that, and I eventually crystallized these ideas. And so I've entitled this presentation, How to Turn the Great Isolation. I think about that in terms of, we had the Great Recession, and then we really had the Great Recovery that was ended by the Great Isolation. And so what I tried to stay in that theme and say, how to turn the Great Isolation into the Great Opportunity. So the purpose of this presentation is to explore 3 questions with you. The first question is, how can I improve my value proposition? I find that as I wander around the marketplace and interact with various stakeholders in the commercial real estate arena, that many times our value proposition is not very well stated. A lot of times people will say who they are. I am a commercial lender. I am a commercial real estate broker. I'm a property manager. Sometimes they'll add in additional ideas like I'm the #1 broker in the Southeast. I'm the #1 multifamily guy in my company. And so I want to think about how to improve that value proposition, make it even more compelling to those who listen to it. The second question I want to work with today is, how should I be engaging my clients and prospects now? Many of us we're so used to meeting in person. Let's meet for coffee. Let's meet at the property. And now we're forced to be removed from each other, lots and lots of virtual calls. But I want to think through that idea with you is how can we not just talk to them, but engage them right now? And then third, how can I increase my market penetration when the market returns? This is really an offensive statement in the idea that wherever your capture ratio was before the downturn, is it possible to be even stronger when you come back? Is it possible to use this period of isolation to strengthen your market capture? And so we will look at that question as we go. Now, there won't be as much Q&A to follow at the end, although you can contact GCRE or me personally if you have questions when this is over. Okay, so here's the first question. How can I improve my value proposition? And I wanted to show this slide because I'm sensitive to the fact that the isolation is affecting all of us differently. For me, I'm an empty nester. I've worked out of my home for the last 10 years. So the shock of isolation and getting set up really wasn't a problem for me, but I'm very sensitive to the fact that some of you suddenly have the whole family home. You're trying to figure out how to get kids on the computer, off the computer. You got multiple generations. You got lots of different things going on. So in that case, you may have an opportunity only to implement the simple solution. Some of you will have a little bit more time to concentrate. Maybe you could contribute an entire hour to this idea, and so that's the moderate answer for you. And then many of you will have an opportunity to really dig in, maybe to do something totally new, to investigate, to learn. And so I've created an advanced answer as well. So for each of the 3 questions that I'm going to present today, I'm going to present a simple answer, a moderate answer, and an advanced answer. Let me show you what I mean. So here's the first question again. How can I improve my value proposition? Well, my simple answer is claim it. And what I mean by that is state your value proposition in 10 words or less and paste it into your email signature. So what you see on the screen there is a value proposition that I like. This one comes from a guy named Bo Beery who sells multifamily properties in the northern half of Florida. So his value proposition is we help investors find and buy multifamily assets. An easy way to tell whether you are getting any traction with the value proposition that you're currently using is if, when you express it to someone, one of 2 things happens. If they say, oh, hey, do you know Blaine Strickland? Do you know Bo Beery? In other words, what's happening is they're beginning to associate what you're saying with somebody they know. Alternatively, they might ask a good question. So if you said, we help investors find and buy multifamily assets, then they might say something like, so you work with people that buy apartment complexes. And so when you hear those kinds of reactions to your value proposition, what you know then is that they are beginning to associate it with something they already know. And that is extremely valuable because it makes you more memorable. Now, if you're not quite sure how to make progress on this idea, one way to do it is to just take a blank sheet of paper and write down words as quick as you can that you think might go in your email signature. Sometimes when I work on this with groups, there'll be 20 or 30 or 40 words that will appear. And what you do then is start to pick out the most important words. Sometimes you have to eliminate the least important words and see if you can mold that into a statement of 10 words or less. Once you get it, put it in your email signature, put it as your descriptor, the line right underneath your name and your LinkedIn profile. Think about using it on all of your marketing materials. Remember, what we're trying to do with the value proposition is be memorable, gain traction. Okay, here's a moderate idea. You could explain it. And what I mean by that is instead of just simply saying it, you could work a little bit harder. You could give a little more context to your answer. So the most common way to do that is to craft a testimonial. The most common structure for a testimonial is represented by the acronym CART, C-A-R-T. That stands for Challenge, Action, Result, Testimonial. And it works like this. The challenge goes something like this. Mr. Jenkins had a property that had been abandoned for many years. The improvements were essentially derelict, and yet wanted to sell the property and clean it up so that he could sell the property and give the proceeds to the next generation. That was the challenge. The action was he hired commercial broker Brad Smith of ABC Realty, who immediately had the property surveyed and brought 2 or 3 other vendors to bear, including asbestos and demolition experts, to advise on clearing the improvements from the property. The result would be that Mr. Jenkins authorized Mr. Smith to remove the improvements, mow the tract of land, and the property was under contract within 3 weeks of reaching the marketplace. And the testimonial goes like this. Mr. Jenkins is quoted as saying, if it hadn't been for Brad Smith of ABC Realty, I never would have gotten this property sold. I was very pleased with Brad's willingness to jump in and take control of this project and get the job done for me. So I would tell you that you want to try to have 2 or 3 sentences in each of those 4 segments. I see a lot of testimonials that are text heavy, and I would just encourage you to try to get to the storyline, the most important points of the story as quickly as possible. Some of you are using recommendations on LinkedIn. I don't know if you know that LinkedIn has a built-in testimonial holder. When I first started my coaching business more than 10 years ago, for the first 3 years, I didn't even have a website, and it was because I was using LinkedIn as my website. So let me show you what that looks like. If you were to go to my profile on LinkedIn and scroll down, you would come to recommendations. And so you can see there that I have 22 recommendations there. I have 22 testimonials there. And LinkedIn has an easy process for it. You just click on ask for a recommendation. You direct it to someone that you know. LinkedIn says, hey, Blaine Strickland has asked you for a recommendation. You prepare that recommendation. You push the button. You send it back to Blaine. Blaine has an opportunity to either accept it or ask for edits, so it can go back and forth a couple of times, and then finally it comes in, it goes in, and then it's pasted right there. So permanently now I have 22 testimonials sitting there on my LinkedIn profile. So this is something that you could do too. Pick out 4 or 5 people that you've worked with and ask them for a recommendation. Now you can see that I have given 26 recommendations, and that's a fair play in this deal, which is if you ask someone for a recommendation and they say, hey, would you recommend me? Sure, you would. There's no harm in that. It doesn't take anything away from them recommending you. So here's a way to make your testimonial or explain your value proposition even more powerful. Now here's the advanced answer, which is show them. In other words, first claim it, second explain it, and this one I call broaden it or show them what you do. And one of the things that I would like for you to think about is employing a Gantt chart. If you've never seen a Gantt chart, then you should Google that. But let me make it simple for you. Any commercial real estate that you've ever bought or sold that has improvements on it employed a Gantt chart. Every architect and every engineer uses a Gantt chart as part of their project management tools to get the job done on budget and on schedule. So the simple idea behind a Gantt chart is that you list out all of the steps in the sequence, and then you show duration and you show how they are sequential in the way that they get completed. Here's the idea behind a Gantt chart, which is you would end up saying to Mr. Jenkins, look, Mr. Jenkins, in order for you to relocate your office from this side of town to that side of town, these 53 steps have to be undertaken. Now, you could do them yourself, but the reason that you would hire me as your representative is because I do this every day. This is what I traffic in every day. And so my value proposition is that I expertly guide you through these steps. So this is not a true Gantt chart. It's one that I took off the internet. I'm thankful to Colt Power, who is a commercial real estate broker in Austin, Texas, who allowed me to use this. But it gives a very simple way to look at it. You can see that this set of tasks, look down the green column on the left, and you can see there's something like 53 tasks there. And if you look at the duration, the red bar across the top, you can see this thing takes 12 months to complete. So part of the way that you express your value proposition is to show it. And you show, this is exactly what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to lead you through these steps carefully, expertly, always helping you know where we are and what's coming next. That's a pretty strong value proposition. Now, you can create these yourself, but what I would recommend is that you simply go to upwork.com, type in, I need a Gantt chart, explain what you're trying to display. Now, it might be tenant improvements, it might be a relocation process, it might be a sale process. You might even use it for internal purposes. I've seen a lot of agents and producers use it for internal processes. So I want you to think in terms of how could you improve the demonstration of your value proposition by showing it graphically like this. Okay, let's move to question number 2. How should I be engaging clients and prospects now? Well, the easy answer to that is to post content on social media. So here's what I want you to think about in that regard. Many of us have LinkedIn profiles, or we use Instagram or Facebook for business. And so we're thinking, sure, some of us merely are takers. We just like things, or we put smiley faces, or sometimes we'll comment on somebody's content. And, that's okay. When I think about it from your standpoint, what I'm trying to think through is how can you gain traction with the people that you care about? And the best way to do that is to post content that you create in these channels. But let me offer this idea to you. This is a great, great opportunity for you to scroll through the people that you're linked to. And here's what I find. I would tell you that my experience has been that most producers, most people who are selling something, end up with fairly significant social media presence, but less than 25% of their most important clients are linked to them. So the first thing I would say to you is, are you linked to your most important clients? What I often find is that the content that's posted is applauded by those who do the same thing that we do. Or to say it differently, if you're a commercial real estate broker and you post and you get 100 likes, and it turns out that 90 of those likes are from other commercial real estate brokers that you know, well, that's great. You've engaged with your fellow brokers, but you haven't penetrated into your client base. So you might even think about creating a closed group for your clients. What if you knew you had your 100 best clients in a private LinkedIn group, and you posted into that group, and then every comment or like or view that you got, you knew was coming from someone who might ultimately pay you? Keep in mind that one way to generate content is to ask a question or use LinkedIn's new survey tool so that you are getting feedback. In other words, this would be proprietary data or first level data, where you say, what are your rent collections for the month of September? Are they better or worse? Do you expect rent collections to go up or down in the future? When you start to create that kind of content, you are really right at the cutting edge of the marketplace. And so there's an opportunity for you there to be really a thought leader because of the way that you're using social media. Okay, here's the moderate answer. Call people that you should or could have reached out to over the past year. The top producers that I work with are telling me that they are having the best conversations with their clients that they've ever had, period. Let me repeat that. They are having better conversations in this downturn than they've ever had with their clients. And the reason for that is because the way these conversations are starting is that they are saying, hey, Jerry, I haven't talked to you in a while. How's it going? How's the COVID situation affecting your business or your family? When things are go, 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 we tend to be, hey, Jerry, how you doing? And you're not even really paying attention to that answer. Listen, I want to check in with you on Valencia Garden. There's a lot of things going on in the marketplace. Have you given some thought to selling that property? And so you get right into transaction talk, and you haven't really expanded the relationship. So this is the time to expand that relationship. Now, you cannot do that by saying, hi, my name is Kevin. Do you want to sell? You have to start in with the personal aspects. And what you'll find is people have more time to engage on that front. So one of the things I would just say to you is see if you can find 10 people that you probably should have communicated with over the past year, and they've maybe fallen back, but they're valuable to you. And so go find those people and dig them out. When you're having those conversations, think in terms of asking questions that would be interesting to others. So if you were to ask them, hey, how do you feel your tenants are reacting to this? How do you see your rent collections going? Are you taking this time to introduce capital improvements? Well, if 2 or 3 people tell you the same thing, then when you get to the 4th or 5th call, you're able to say, hey, Mr. Smith, one of the reasons I called is because I'm finding that a lot of my prospects, a lot of my clients are talking about capital improvements these days. They're taking this time to embed capital improvements. What are you doing on that front? And so the prospects love hearing what other people are doing. They're isolated from those other prospects. So if you can be the aggregator of information, the person who links information from person to person to person, you're providing a valuable service. And that's why the calls go so well. So here's the more complex answer to this question. How should I be engaging clients and prospects now? Well, offer an online learning session. In other words, what you're trying to think about there is, can you create engagement on their side? So let me give you a couple of ideas here. I have been involved with some clients who have asked me simply to give 2 or 3 ideas. So they assemble their staff and then they say, hey, could you just give us 2 or 3 ideas about this topic? Sometimes I have to research those topics. Sometimes I'm already aware of how people feel about those topics. But they are desperate to keep their teams engaged, their people engaged. So one of the things that you can do is slide into that slot. I tell the story in one of the books that I wrote about a broker who is frequently invited to offer lunch and learn presentations to the staff of a large REIT. And this has been going on for 3 or 4 years. This was long before COVID. And here's how it worked. The REIT really valued this one particular broker, and he would assemble 5 or 6 points about the market. And once a quarter, he would call in, do a group call like this, and walk the people through these ideas. And he did it for free, but he was obviously someone that they cared about, someone that they kept in touch with, and had a sort of a top-of-mind relationship with. So what are you doing on that front? It's so easy to do now. And you know that, I mean, all of us have learned how to use Zoom. All of us have learned how to record the session. All of us have learned how to get the link to the archive and send it on to somebody. Some of us have even learned how to clean up those presentations. But if that's not the first step for you, one of the things that you could think about is, what if you gathered a group of people together, maybe prospects, maybe allies, and said, look, there's an opportunity here for us to work on a book together, something that we could all learn together. To that end, if you have not read Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, Voss, V-O-S-S, Chris Voss has written a book called Never Split the Difference. It's really game-changing. It's about negotiation. It's a great book to read and then talk about as a group. Sometimes you can use these sessions to be sort of an idea, a brainstorming session, a fire starter, as some people call it. And the way to do that is to say, look, when we come back, let's all take some time away from the heat of battle to think about 3 ideas that we could use to welcome our tenants back. And so when you start this little session, what you say is, okay, Bill, why don't you give us the first thing you've written down? Go ahead, just say what it is, gets typed on the screen. Then Jackie, then Barbara, then Elizabeth, then Chad. And you get all these ideas put up onto the screen as quickly as possible. And so it doesn't take too long until you have 15 or 20 ideas. And at that point, you then start to judge them. You say, so Bill, of the 15 ideas you see on the screen, which are the 3 that you like the most? So again, this is the way that you can create engagement. It's a learning opportunity. It may not be, session may not be the right word, but you can engage with allies, with stakeholders, with clients, with prospects. This is the time to do it. Now, if you were to look at the book that I wrote recently called Adapt, I actually put the study group questions right in the back as an appendix. And so you'll find many, many books now that either have the appendix where the study questions are right there for you, or if you will go to Amazon and type in study guide for Never Split the Difference, other people have created them. And so there's really no reason not to take advantage of this opportunity, because the questions many times are already there for you. So it's all you have to do is say, look, gang, we're going to read chapters 1 through 3, and we're going to work on questions A, B, and C in our upcoming call. Okay, let's look at the third and final question. How can I increase my market penetration when the market returns? So this begs the question, of course, that you would have some sense of what your market penetration was before the downturn, before the pandemic, and now what you're thinking about is how can you make it even stronger? So the simple idea here, the first one is scour your database. So gang, I would tell you that if I were to survey all the people that I work with and say, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the accuracy of your database? And I believe that I would get ratings no higher than 8, and probably 6 would be about the average, 5 to 6. So this is the perfect opportunity to scour your database, which means clean up all of those duplicates. You have people in there that have been in there for 3 jobs now. It's like, I know that guy doesn't have that job anymore. I know that's not right. I know this person moved. Maybe this is where you'll find the people that those 10 people that I wanted you to call for the last question. But as you scour your database, what's going to happen to you is that you're going to be able to find 3 new conclusions. You're going to go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that guy now had 5 properties. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that all the vacant space was on the north side of the street. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that there were more than 1 million square feet added to this marketplace. What's going to happen to you, because you're always in motion, always trying to produce and use the database, that you don't have much time to reflect on the database. But I promise you, if you will take 15 minutes and just scroll through it, you will find some things that will be compelling to you. And if you can find those things, then what they do is they cause you to intentionally act. In other words, how am I going to increase my market penetration? Well, because I took a few minutes to find the nuggets that were buried in my database. Another idea for you here is to use what's called a user-defined field. Excuse me. A user-defined field means that you define the name of the field and then the type of the answer. So as an example, if you were looking at office tenants as an example, you might want to define something about them. Are they in the fintech field? Are they on the ground floor? Have they renewed their lease at least 3 times, whatever it might be? And so what happens is you put in ground floor, and then the answer is either yes or no. What that does is it creates that field in the entire database. And as you begin to interview those people and track your data, you reflect on that field. Pretty soon, you could search by that field, and it turns out that in your database, you can find 53 tenants that are on the ground floor. So the next time you're marketing a ground floor space, you might decide to search by that. So one way to clean up your database is to use user-defined fields. All databases have them. Some of them are preset, and you can just edit them. Some of them give you the ability to install them. Very valuable way to begin to clean up your database, because ultimately it enables you to sort very, very effectively. So here's the moderate answer. This comes out of the first book that I wrote called Thrive. The very first chapter in Thrive deals with what's called top of mind prospecting. And the idea is that you identify 125 prospects with whom you think you can do business over the next 5 years. So here's the 3 criteria for someone to earn a spot in your top 125. A, do they control a deal that you would want to do? B, will that deal happen in the next 5 years? And C, are they willing to engage with you? So as you begin to work with these various prospects and you go, oh my gosh, this person meets the criteria for the top 125, you begin to focus on that person and you make a high quality touch once a quarter. So that means over the course of 5 years, you would make 20 high quality touches. So the idea of how do you increase your market penetration is, in effect, you are predicting who is going to do a deal, or to say it differently, you're predicting 125 deals to occur over the next 5 years. Now, let's just say that went down on a straight line basis. So that's 25 per year for the next 5 years. And if you focused on these people because you were making high quality touches, what would your capture rate be? So if I said to you, hey, Sam, here's a list of 125 deals that are going to go down in your territory on your watch over the next 5 years. First of all, how much would you pay me for that list? And then secondly, what would you do with that list? So I want you to think in terms of developing an intentional prospecting program like that. Now, some of you will say, I don't have 125 people. It's like, great, start with where you're at and grow the list over time up to 125. If you would like to learn more about this idea, you can go to my website, www.hbs-resources, that's the name of my company, HBS, and then a dash, resources.com. Go to the resources tab, click on the webinar. There's a 45-minute free to you webinar that explains this top 125 prospecting idea. Wouldn't it be fantastic if you could spend an hour developing this list and then begin to focus on these people over the next 5 years? Now, here's the most complicated answer, the most sophisticated answer, which is, what if I just simply said to you, predict the next 50 transactions in your marketplace? Now, you already know that Reonomy and others are beginning to use a predictive algorithm. If I asked you, how would you predict the next 50 transactions? You could use sort of the Netflix, Google, Amazon way, which is that what they do is they look at past transactions. And just think if you were looking at a list of 200 past transactions in your area, in your market, and you had, let's say, 40 data points about each one. What day did it occur? When was the last time it had transacted? Who was the buyer? Who was the seller? What type of entity was the buyer? What type of seller? How did the property rate in the marketplace? How did the zip code of the property relate to job growth? Whatever it might be. And what you would end up with is an algorithm that when you run the list of all properties through that algorithm, it begins to point to ones that say this one has a 70% chance of selling because it meets the criteria of past events. There's a sort of a simpler way to do it also. What if I just said to you, look, take a piece of paper, write down the next 50 transactions. We're going to put it in the mayonnaise jar, the hermetically sealed mayonnaise jar for the next year. At the end of the year, we're going to take it out, we're going to open it up, and we're going to look to see how you did. Now, what if you made a list of 50 properties that you thought were going to transact in some way, and it turned out that 22 of them did when we got there a year from now? And I would say, wow, how did you do that? And you said, well, I had impressions about what was going to happen. Any property that had a capital improvement of more than $1 million in the last year, I knew those people were likely to sell because they wanted to recover that money. I knew that if they had financing coming due in the next year, there was a 50-50 chance instead of refinancing, they would sell. I knew that most of the tenants in this marketplace are moving from the old buildings into the new buildings because the new buildings have access to mass transit. So what you're doing is using your instinct, your intuition about the marketplace to create relative weighting. But gang, this is the future. This is already happening. In the future, you and your competitors will be looking at lists that indicate that these properties, these tenants, these prospects are most likely to act. And so if you want to be as powerful as you can be and keep up with the crowd, you're going to have to think in terms of predictability. And when you start thinking about that, if you knew what was going to happen, what would you do about it? How could you take actions that would get you there? And that's the idea of sharpening your ability to increase your market penetration, which is, in the past, it was like, it's just a numbers game. You just have to call on as many people as you can and hope you get in the way. Well, those days have gone by. Now there is much more ability to predict what's going to happen. And even if it's not perfect, even if it's only 60% accurate, it does give you the ability to focus your efforts. As you focus your efforts, you'll get a greater capture ratio. So the idea of how can you increase your market penetration when the market returns is twofold. Number one, focus on the predictive indicators. And number two, build a plan around those targeted prospects. If you knew who might move, what would you do? So it's a new day and a new game. Okay, so there you go. We've covered the three questions. How can I improve my value proposition? How can I engage with clients and prospects now? And how can I increase my market penetration? So many people ask me, can I buy these books that you've mentioned? The answer is yes. Thrive was written in early 2018. Adapt was written earlier this year, published earlier this year. Both of those books are available on Amazon in hardcover, Kindle, and audiobook versions. You can also buy the hardcovers at my website, and there you go, www.hbs-resources.com. There's many free resources at that website, whether you go to my website or to Amazon. And if you want to buy the hardcover, and only the hardcover, if you'll type in ADAPT 2020 as the promo code, you'll save 20% on the hardcover. So it reduces the price for you. You can see there's my name and email address and phone number. So if you have questions as a result of what we've talked about today, you're certainly welcome to contact me. I'll do the best I can to respond to you. So there you go. There was a quick run through of 3 ideas with 3 answers to each question on how you could turn the great isolation into the great opportunity. Thank you for participating today.
Blaine, that was a very good show. We thank you for that. Really appreciate it at GCRE. Just a couple of questions for you. So this is for sort of anybody who is a broker who is trying to get into the industry or trying to navigate the waters right now of what's going on, right? Or is that generally for business people? Because this advice that you've given people, I think could be used cross-sector and not just in particular in just property alone. How do you feel about that?
That's absolutely right, Gavin. Most of my clients are commission-oriented brokers, and so it really falls to them to take advantage of this time. In other words, they're independent contractors, they don't have set hours, and so this was really trying to find some ways for them to make that list that they need to make and find a way to engage with these ideas. But do I think these ideas would work for anyone that has clients? In other words, could a commercial lender, could a mortgage broker, could a title company, could an appraiser use these same ideas? Anyone who has clients can use a lot of these ideas. Who among us couldn't do a better job with our LinkedIn profile? Who among us couldn't stop and think about how to create content that would be engaging to our prospects? So the answer to your question is yes, it was born in the broker arena, but it has implications for anyone in our entire arena that has clients.
Yeah, I think you're right. I need to take some of that advice myself and possibly maybe I can hire you to do some work for me. No, I mean, thank you for that. It was really informative. I really enjoyed it a lot. And again, like always, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Is there any last thoughts you want to leave with anybody before we finish off the show?
Well, I think that we now know that this is going to be a long haul. We've got some time to do it. I'm finding that a lot of people are beginning to invest in some way in making their business better. Mm-hmm. So I think it's gone from, hey, here are some ideas how you could maybe do better. But I find a lot of clients now, they're investing in their CRM, they're moving their CRM to the cloud, they're picking up advanced certifications. And so I think we've kind of gone from, oh my gosh, I'm in shock, to, well, let's see, what can we do with this period because we're all isolated, to now the third phase, which is we are aggressively using this time period to improve our skills. Yes. So I would encourage everyone to dig in.
Okay, great. Blaine, well, it was a pleasure to have you today. I look forward to speaking to you again on GCRE, and we hope you have an enjoyable rest of your day.
Thank you, Gavin. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it as well.
Take care.